In the world of Philippine radio, some names are big, but the duo, Karjack, they were something else entirely. They basically built an empire for their station, Energy FM. But then, right at the very peak of their success, they walked away. So what we're going to dive into is this incredible story of loyalty, a huge conflict, and really, what happens when the creators who built a brand clash with the very corporation they made famous. So that's the big question, right? How on earth did this one radio duo manage to build a whole media empire? And then, why did they suddenly just walk away from it all? This isn't just a simple story about someone quitting their job. No, it's way deeper. It's about this massive collision between incredible creative success and a really sudden, really drastic change in the company culture.
Okay, so to really get why they left, we first have to wrap our heads around just how huge they were. I mean, we need to understand what they built from the ground up. So let's kick things off with what everyone called the carjack phenomenon.
I mean, look at this. The difference is just night and day. Before Papa Jackson and Gandankara came along, Energy FM was, doing okay. Modest engagement, a limited audience. But after Carjack, it became an absolute commercial powerhouse. We're not talking about a small increase here. This was a complete, total transformation, and it was all because of this one incredible duo. And let's break down just how big their impact was. They grew the audience by millions. Their social media engagement, it just skyrocketed. And of course, the awards, the prestige, the profits, it all came pouring in. See, they weren't just radio hosts. They were literal empire builders for the station. But here's the thing. Their contribution wasn't just about the numbers and the awards. It was also about what they were willing to give up for the station. And that brings us to this idea of their culture of sacrifice. Now, think about this for a second. In today's world, for any media personality, your personal YouTube channel is everything. It's your brand, your direct connection to your audience. But Carjack, they made the deliberate choice to hold back on their own channel. Why? Because they didn't want it to compete with their show on Energy FM. This wasn't some accident or oversync. It was a conscious decision, a huge sacrifice, and a pretty clear sign of their loyalty. So you see, their loyalty wasn't just something they talked about. It was right there in their actions. They were constantly putting the station's growth ahead of their own personal brand. And honestly, that's a level of dedication you just don't see very often. So you have all this success, all this sacrifice, years of building, and then everything changed. This is where the story takes a sharp turn. This was the turning point. And the catalyst for this big change was pretty clear. New management came in. Suddenly, what had been this thriving, really collaborative place to work, well, it started to feel very, very different. The stage was basically set for a huge conflict. And we're not just talking about a vague vibe change here. No, there were real, concrete changes happening. Policies got incredibly strict. People started feeling harassed, even bullied. They were dealing with these unusually rigid procedures for everything. I mean, get this, you'd even need special clearance just to bring your own personal stuff into the station. The whole culture was just fundamentally shifting, and not in a good way. You can probably see where this is going. This slow, steady chipping away at the old culture, it was all heading towards a breaking point. The tension just kept building until it turned into a decision that couldn't be undone. And man, did things escalate fast. Look at the timeline. First, the new management arrives. Then, boom, these super strict policies are put in place. The next thing you know, Papa Jackson's managerial authority is effectively stripped away. So that final, dramatic on-air resignation on February 23rd, it wasn't some random, out-of-the-blue decision. It feels more like the inevitable end to a very rapid downward spiral. And some of the incidents that happened were, well, they felt deeply personal. Here's a key one. Papa Jackson, who was still the station manager, allegedly shows up to find he's been locked out of his own office. No warning, no notice. He couldn't even get his personal belongings. I mean, can you imagine? That one moment just screams a total lack of respect and communication. But really, this went way deeper than just a locked door. The core reason for everything, according to Papa Jackson, was that he had become a station manager in title only. His actual authority? It had been slowly and systematically taken away to the point where the title itself just felt completely meaningless. Which brings us to maybe the most dramatic part of this whole saga. Why go out with such a bang? Why say goodbye live, on the air? I mean, why not just quietly write a resignation letter and be done with it? Well, the reason is pretty powerful. He was afraid of being silenced. He'd seen it happen before. He brought up a past incident with another popular host, Chico Loco, who apparently wasn't allowed to have a final on-air goodbye with his listeners. So, to make absolutely sure he could speak directly to the millions of fans who had supported him for years, he used the one platform he knew he still had control over, his own microphone.
But no matter how dramatic the ending was, it doesn't just erase everything they built. It can't. So let's talk about their undeniable legacy. Millions, that's it. That's the legacy in a single word. The millions of listeners they brought to the station, the millions of social media engagements they created, that number, right there, represents the very foundation of the Energy FM we know today, a foundation that they built. So when you look at it from their perspective, it's a story about a really painful imbalance. They gave everything, loyalty, insane effort, real sacrifice. They poured it all into the station. But in the end, what they felt they got back wasn't appreciation. It was injustice. And that really is the key takeaway here. No matter how this chapter ended, the legacy of Karjack just can't be erased. It's a permanent part of the station's history. That truth lives on in all the memories and, most importantly, in the millions of fans who made them a phenomenon to begin with.
So this leaves us with the one big question that's still out there. What's next for Karjack? Yeah, their time at Energy FM is over, but for a duo that proved they could build an empire from scratch, you have to believe a new chapter is just getting started. So what do you think? What does their future look like?